thought that it might be helpful to just check in with you guys again before we start with, I guess, the main topics of the day. So I'm going to share my screen, and I have just two very brief questions that I'm asking you. Yeah, so maybe take 3, 4, however many minutes you need to think about this. What are 2 or 3 of your biggest concerns right now? This could be school related, it could be other things, it could be that you need tutoring or that you need, to know something about the fall semester or whatever the case may be. Try and think about what are 2 or 3 of your biggest concerns right now, and then what kind of support would be helpful to you, either from me, so how can I help you with that concern, or from LaGuardia or others? By others, I mean, in the city or elsewhere. So maybe take 3 or 4 minutes just to think that through, and then I'll have people call out their concerns, just so that I can take them down and so that I can try and give you the assistance that you need. If you are dialed in a way where you can't speak, you're welcome to just put your answers in the chat window. Okay, so let's just take a few minutes to do this. If you just joined, I see one person just joined. You're just answering these 2 questions, and then we'll share in the group. If you just joined, I see someone just joined. We're answering these 2 questions. We'll give it another 2 minutes until 10:42, and then we'll share in the group. All right, so that's about it for time. Um, let me, well, I guess I don't have to stop the share. Can um, anybody who would like to start with discussing some concerns, you're welcome to go ahead and start talking.
Well, I gave this question a good process, but the only really concern I have is like just maintaining with school because
Let me
I,
stop the share so that I can see it's Jeremy. Yeah, Jeremy. I remember when we started on the first online class, you said that was a concern, right? To keep up with your classes.
uh yeah, it is a bit of a concern because I don't know. I'm just like a really like unorganized person, and like sometimes I'm like so focused on one class that I forget about the others. Like this vacation, like a lot of classes gave me a lot of work,
Mm,
and I would not even spend days, like just hours on one, and I would
one class.
not forget about the other classes, but move on to the next task in this
Mm,
class.
mm.
And
So it sounds like you're saying once you get started with one class, it's difficult for you to change over to work on something else. Am I understanding you correctly?
yeah, because it's like I have so much work in one class. It's just a lot.
Mm-hmm.
When it's
And
like,
yeah, go ahead.
and then it's like sometimes I take the little bit of free time like in the day once I'm
Mm.
stuff. I I just be forgetting about other class, which is
And have you had tests and things in your class? I mean, do you know how you're doing in your classes? And I mean, this goes out to everybody. I mean, have you had any indication, Jeremy, of how you're doing? I can see that you're taking principles of accounting one, right? You're taking me. Do you have intro to business,
yeah.
English, and then there's a math class? But which are you taking one of these classes in session two?
Um, no, actually, I
You're
don't.
taking all of them now?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay. That's a lot of work. I
I
mean, real talk, right? English already, that class is like 5 hours a week of work before homework. Okay, so I guess now the question is what can be done? Have you found any approach that works for you? Like, have you tried to divide your day up into blocks where you say 2 hours to accounting, and even if you're not completely done, you have to move to the next task? Have you tried any of those types of exercises?
uh, well, no, actually, I just kind of devote all my time and like energy to one homework, and if it takes me all day, it's gonna take me all day.
Yeah, so my advice, and interestingly enough, next week we'll do time management. This week I just thought we'd start with personal finance, just because I know money is also something that people are thinking about a lot these days. But from a time management perspective, I mean, other people can chime in with what they do. My advice to you, Jeremy, would be this, and I'm going to be frank and say that I too, not so much now because I'm very busy, but when I'm faced like with a whole day of unscheduled time, so I can do anything during that time, I actually find it very difficult to manage my time properly if I don't you know uh, put blocks of time for different things and force myself to stop. Just like you, I could end up spending all the time on one thing, and then when I get to the end of the day, I realize I forgot something critical that I was supposed to do, and then I have to stay up all night to do it. Plus the challenge when you say that you are just going to allow yourself to spend the whole day on something is that you don't create a sense of urgency that it has to get done, you know. So there can be all kinds of distractions and stuff in between, and because you don't have a, and by you I mean we, okay, so I'm not picking on you, but you don't have a set deadline. So, you know, you might be busy with an accounting, one homework, someone calls you in the house, or suddenly it's time for lunch, or then it's this and that. And whereas if you had said, I'm giving this thing 2 hours and I got to get it done, you know, it just creates a level of urgency that wouldn't be there if you have the whole day, you know, available. So what I would, and you said, I mean, you acknowledged that, that you sometimes are disorganized. So I would say maybe even trying for one day, like tonight, maybe sit down and think about the things that you would like to do tomorrow. And then I don't know what time you get up and all of that. You don't have to tell me that, but work it out from the time that you get up, write in the things that you have to do. I mean, there's certain things that you have to do, like eat and sleep and whatever. And then in the rest of the hours, you know that you have these 5 classes. Doesn't mean that you have to work on every class every day, but look at the work that is due and see what is the most crucial thing that you have to get done in the morning. Start with that. Maybe give yourself, depending on what the work is, 2 hours or something to get that done. Then move on to the next thing. Right, just move on. You, because in these days of not having structure in a way, it's going to be very difficult to motivate yourself to finish things in a very short period of time if you don't have a schedule. Am I making sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So do you think that it's doable for you to be able to write out tonight a schedule for yourself for Wednesday to say how you will spend your time?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I could definitely do it.
Yeah, and if there's stuff that's already overdue that you, with things maybe you owe me or you owe another professor, or there's something coming up, I think you have to prioritize, you know, the things that you need to do. But I wouldn't spend, unless you have a test or something coming up, if you're just doing a day of work and you have 5 classes, I would try to spend about 2 hours on each class, just to get up to date. And some classes, there might not be 2 hours worth of work. So then you can move on to something else. But if you say, I'm going to go from 10 to 12 on accounting, then you have to stop at 12 o'clock. All right. And then move on to the next thing. And any extra time that you have at the end, you could always come back to your accounting class. And if you have a test the next day and you have to study the whole day for one class, then, you know, then that's how you spend that day. But, you know, spending the whole day on something that's not an emergency is not going to help you to be successful in these 5 classes.
Yeah, I always try to like get it done, but if it's like a lot, then it would take me the whole day, and I do be getting distracted sometimes with like
Yeah,
my.
of course. We all do, because no one wants to sit in a chair all day doing the work. That's why you almost, like, I've had this myself where I actually put a stopwatch and I say I'm spending 30 minutes on this thing, and when the timer goes off, then I'm done and I have to move on to the next thing. And it actually helps your brain to move on to the next topic. Otherwise, you're just spinning in circles sometimes because you're not actually making progress. And then it becomes easier to go and watch TV a little bit or something. By the end of the day, you feel like you've accomplished nothing, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so set a clock that says after an hour, check in with myself. How am I doing? Do another hour, move on to the next thing. Put breaks in between, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or whatever. Do not start, I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to all of us. Do not start the day with watching TV, because you will never stop watching TV. You need to use the TV as an incentive, where you say, okay, I'm going to work in the morning, then I'm going to take a lunch break. During lunch, maybe I'll watch something, and then I have to go back. If you start the day playing video games or watching TV or reading a book, I mean, I speak from experience, it's the book is always going to be more interesting than the work. You know, the TV is more interesting than the work. So start with the work, get a sense of accomplishment, and then you can go do whatever you want to do for the rest of the day. All right.
Definitely.
I'm gonna check in with you. Okay. Who else wants to share? What are you? What are some of your concerns right now?
Professor
Yeah.
Steve,
Yeah.
I guess I'll share. A concern of mine at the moment, as Jeremy was overhearing as well. Yeah, the organization definitely is something that's always needed, especially
Mm.
now. But my concern is the work being handed in late. Now, our professors taking this, I'm curiosity, because I know you're one professor, but I'm just curious for the other professors as well. The lateness
Mm.
work, and there's a lot of work that I'm getting bunched up on, and
Mm.
I'm getting it done little by little, everything handing it out. But yeah,
Mm.
I'm not handing it in on time at
Mm.
current assignments. So I'm just a
Right.
little concerned on that as well. How maybe that could affect as
Of
well.
course. Yeah.
So
So the first thing that I'll say is, and no one's going to like this answer, but I have to say it, is that professors vary drastically in terms of their approach, to how much leniency they will give. We're in the midst of a pandemic, so my hope would be that people would be more lenient than usual. What I will say, if you're in a position where you are running behind, and I'm speaking from the perspective of a professor, and I mean, I've had people in my class, even in this class, who have done this. If you know that you are busy missing a deadline or you are running behind or something, your best bet is to communicate with the professor. The worst thing that you can do is not hand in work and then also be completely silent. I think, a little bit rare, because I actually email people to tell them that they haven't done the work. I don't think everybody does that. I think it more often happens the other way, where the professor would expect the student to contact them. So if you find that in some of your classes you're running late, the first thing that I would say from an organizational perspective, and I'll show you guys here in a minute, because I did it for us for this class. I actually created, I don't think Hoover is on the call, but I remember from our first call, he asked for like a master calendar that shows all the dates when things are due, so that people will be able to keep up. I think your first bet, Steve, is to make sure that you understand all the deadlines for all the classes, like when things are actually due, and then see where you are on track and see where you are behind, where you've fallen behind. And immediately, for the places where you've fallen behind, I think you need to reach out to those professors and say, I am still engaged with the material. I am still working on this. The current situation is just causing me to fall behind. And I'm working, to get up to date. That's all you can do for yourself at that point. It's up to the professor to respond, to say, okay, that's fine. Here's the date by when you should do it. Or they might say, I'm so sorry, but you've had 4 weeks to do this, and the time has passed. Because it's a difference if a professor gives you a deadline today for Thursday, and you're like, this is not going to work out. Whereas if they gave you a deadline already at the beginning of the semester for something that was due in 5 weeks, they might be less lenient if you've known for a long time that this thing was coming due. But you should still communicate with them. I have some students who kind of I thought disappeared, and not just in this class, in my other classes also, but then suddenly came back and said, I was ill and I still want to be able to be part of the class and make up the work. And I'm open to that, but I will never know that if you don't tell me, Does that
definitely.
make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely, Professor. I believe you're absolutely right. Communication is definitely something that's needed.
Yeah. Communication is key, and if you're not hearing back from the professor, there are various ways to communicate with the professor. Some straight from my LaGuardia, that's almost like a type of chat thing, that where the email goes straight to the professor. They might have given you their phone number, they might have given you a personal email. I mean, just try every avenue.
Yeah, of course. They yeah, I have the emails of most, actually all my professors. Yeah.
Okay.
And I did actually email them on the one one that I the one class that right now I'm held back on the work. He hasn't got back to me. But I'm
When did
assuming,
you
yeah.
email the person?
What's the date? Today is Tuesday, right? He emailed Friday.
Okay, so if you don't hear back from them by Thursday, you can probably try again. Do you ever meet with them online or no?
Well, I did mention to you as well that I'm taking accounting.
Yeah.
And we're actually are having our first Zoom session later on today.
Okay.
Yeah, which
Okay.
is a good thing because I didn't hear nothing from that professor.
Okay, great.
The
Great.
discussion. Yeah,
So then you can even in the Zoom, don't be shy, guys. Even in the chat or during the call, just make yourself known and say, "Look, Professor, I'm here. I'm still engaged with the class. I'm just really battling to keep up with everything, and I would just like you to know that I'm still working on X, Y, Z. You know."
exactly. Yeah, no, definitely, Professor. I was just trying to see if, like you said, if maybe the professor going to be more lenient since we're right now in a pandemic.
I mean, my conscience tells me that I should be more lenient. I can't speak to other people's conscience. In our department, we've kind of, our boss is kind of leaves it up to our discretion how we want to handle situations like this. I would hope that people would be more forgiving in these circumstances. If they are not, then you could maybe try to speak to them offline and discuss your specific situation. I think that there's room, there should be room for grace in this time, and that you just have to try. I can't fathom that in the midst of a pandemic, someone can be so hardcore, but it happens, it happens. So you'll have to see how it goes case by case. All right.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you, Professor.
All right. Okay, guys, is there, so we've heard now about time management and trying to schedule your day, dividing it up into chunks so that you actually pay attention to each of your classes. We've heard about trying to stay more organized, put all your deadlines in one place so that you understand what's coming up, especially week by week. And then also about communication, right? You got to communicate with your professors, even if you're behind. Don't be shy. There's no shame. This is a very strange situation we find ourselves in. People actually welcome hearing from their students because it's like, otherwise it's like the students just disappeared and you don't know what's happening with them. And of course, I mean, in my case, when people just disappear, especially in this scenario, I get very worried that they're actually sick and that, they need even more support. Is there anything else? Any final? Yes, go ahead.
That's Anastasia.
Anastasia.
I think I actually surprised that nobody mentioned the topic of our class, that a lot of people might be struggling right now with money and with like absence of work.
Yeah.
So of course I received a stimulus check and I also applied for unemployment, but
okay.
Like for me, there is I pay for school because I wasn't certified for free school.
FAFSA,
so I have
financial aid.
Like my concern for now will be definitely like how to to afford school, and also like if there are any ways that I could receive a scholarship or something if I will be very good in school, because I'm trying and I know that probably my GPA will be okay because I really spend a lot of time on it. But still, I'm not sure about all the qualifications and all of the requirements for grant or for like scholarship or something like this.
Great point. And yes, this is the subject of our talk today. And so since you asked, you said about scholarships, there's a few things. There's the emergency funds from LaGuardia that you can apply for. There's also the LaGuardia Foundation Scholarship, which I'll just share my screen, excuse me, and go there quickly.
I know that for some scholarship, or maybe for all of the scholarship, you have to have like initial GPA, and I was wondering if GPA is something that we're gonna have in the end of the semester, or we can define it like during the semester, like in the middle of the semester.
It depends on each person, because I don't have your stuff right in front of me now, Anastasia. Are you're not in your first semester though, right? You have a GPA already?
No, I'm. It's my first semester.
Okay. So then, for someone like you, I mean, I still think that that you would have to I can help you to contact. I know some people who deal with a scholarship, and I just wonder if perhaps, given the current state of affairs, you know, what's possible. Are you're talking also about paying for school for the fall, right? Or do you mean even for spring too now?
Well, for spring, I still have like some payments to do,
To
but
make, okay.
yeah, but mostly like for the future, definitely like for fall.
Okay. So we basically have to attack it from two angles. It's the immediate need of the spring, and then there's a subsequent need for the fall. So yeah, everybody should be able to see my screen. This is the to qualify for the scholarship through the LaGuardia Foundation. These are the steps that you have to take. And, you know, they basically have to make sure that you actually have a need, which most of you would, or at least Anastasia, you asked this question, you would have this anyway. Be enrolled for 12 or more credits, which you are. And then, I mean, they're asking for the minimum GPA is 2.0. And I know your GPA is technically 0, but the point is, if you had to start, I can email someone to ask if you had to start doing the application now. You know, what does that mean? Like, will they have to wait for the end of the semester to see your GPA or what? And then there's also the emergency funds qualification, which is a similar, you know, requirements showing need and the GPA and so on. I also know the people who deal with this, and I can ask about folks who haven't finished out the semester yet, who still have a GPA of 0 at this time. And then I believe you would have seen that I sent you guys an announcement, and this stuff is in the presentation that I'll do later anyway, so we're kind of covering the material for today's workshop. But I sent you, let me see here, with the resources. So the CUNY Chancellor is also going to be awarding $500 to students in need, but I guess because there's so much need, it will be almost like a lottery.
Yeah,
so
and
you
I
will
saw
just
it
have
was
to
already like passed. Like until April 10th. Maybe they will do another another wave.
I think they will, because they were still taking donations up to that date. So I'm not even sure why it would have been closed already. I think we have to look. I'll look into that a little bit more to see if there isn't some type of what do you call it? Maybe, like you said, there's probably some type of extension, because I know they were still looking for funds, like for donors. I mean, so what I'll do is I'll email the people for the foundation scholarship and also the people for the emergency funds. I agree with you that there are going to be folks who are looking for ways to pay for school. You said that you are not able to apply for financial aid by completing a FAFSA form. Is that correct?
That's what I thought. Because at this moment, so I was required to provide some document like green card residence or something like this, and I only had like my New York State residency, but I cannot and I could not provide my green card because I'm still waiting for it to be like shipped to
Understood.
me.
Yeah.
And right now,
and everything is delayed.
Yeah, exactly. The USCIS is not working, and they totally closed their offices even. So that's how it is.
Okay, so we can talk more offline. I'm going to email these people and ask them about and I'll share that information with our class because I'm sure there are other people who also have 0 GPA right now. But for those of you who don't, you saw where I went in the website now. You can apply for the foundation scholarship. If you want to apply for emergency funds, there's also an email address for that I put on Blackboard. And then, of course, you know, I'll talk more during the personal finance, you know, presentation here about making sure that you've got your stimulus check if you qualify, and also the unemployment like Anastasia was talking about. All right, Anastasia, so I'll be in touch with you about the GPA issue.
Thank you.
And maybe also to try and figure out what FAFSA is doing for people. Or not what the Student Financial Services is doing to help people who are kind of in limbo like you are.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, no problem. So definitely money is an issue for people, and that's part of also why I wanted to speak today about financial, personal finances and so on. Just before we move into that, I did put in the chat window that there's this Hangout on Zoom that's happening on Wednesday, this Wednesday from 1 to 2:30 p.m. I don't know if people are available, but basically what it is a group of students coming together on Zoom, students with experience in taking online courses, students who are also peer mentors, where you can go to this Hangout if you want to, and just talk through, you know, some of the struggles that you might be having with online learning. People might have tips, or it might just be a session for everybody to, you know, vent their frustrations and maybe try and find ways that others have managed to solve their problems. If you do want to go to this, you have to copy this link because there's an RSVP so that they can send you the Zoom call information. And remember, you have to take this down before we end our call, because the chat window will disappear at that time. And remember, I also have office hours today from 1 to 2 p.m. If you don't feel comfortable sharing, you know, some of your concerns here in the broader group, if you have other questions in the small, we can speak in a smaller venue. I also just want to mention, although I probably will mention this again, that about 14 people submitted their degree plan worksheet, which, you know, is great. For those of you who submitted, I got back to, I think, to everybody who submitted on time, I got back to you by the 14th of April. You received an email from me where I either said you're good to go, or I had a whole string of questions for you. Out of the people that I sent questions to, only about 4 people responded, you know, to clarify what I was asking and so on. And so in that regard, I want you to go back into your email later today and make sure you find the email from me if you haven't read it yet, and that you read it and that you get back to me. Because remember, and I know, you know, per Anastasia's point, there's so much uncertainty about, you know, continuing with school and paying for school and so on. However, we do still have a responsibility to ensure that whether you continue, you know, in the fall, or whether you have to pause and continue later, that you are actually ready, knowing which classes you are supposed to take. And my concern with the people who have not responded back to me is that, you know, I went through and there are like very real questions and issues in your course selection that need to be resolved so that you will be ready to register. And registration begins on April the 23rd, which is this Thursday. Has anybody gone into CUNY First already and seen that they have a registration appointment date and time? Anybody seen that on the CUNY First account yet?
No.
No? Okay, so that's okay. So they may not have put it up yet. So normally they'll put up on CUNY First, when you log into CUNY First, you know, like where you see your schedule and where you see where you can register for classes and stuff, normally on the right hand side it says something like your registration appointment is X date. That doesn't obviously mean you have to go somewhere physically. It just means that from that day on you can start registering for fall 1 and 2. And for the people who have not handed in their degree plan to me, you absolutely have to do this, okay? It counts a big part of your grade for this class. It's something that involves you planning for the future, and we have to get this done and get this right. So, you know, to Steve's point about late submission of work and all of that, this is definitely one thing that even if it's late, I still need to see it, because it's my responsibility to make sure that you guys are advised properly and thoroughly for the rest of your 60 credits. So don't be shy if you forgot about it despite the reminders, or if there's all kinds of chaos going on in your life right now and you just couldn't get to it. That's okay. Please find a way to get it to me. If you don't know where to start and you're having issues, come to the office hours, or alternatively contact me via email. Maybe we can set aside a time where I can speak to you on a one-on-one Zoom call. We have to get this done, okay? There's no two ways about it. So please, if you got an email from me on, I think it was on maybe Sunday or Friday, that said by now your work is late and you still haven't submitted it, then it means that you owe me work and you should talk to me about how to get it to me. All right, so if you have questions about the email I sent you, you're also welcome to come to my office hours today. So that's the degree plan, which again, people need to get back to me on that. So let me go in here and share my screen again. I wanted to show you, just before we go to the personal finance thing, I just wanted to show you here in our Zoom call materials. I did post a revised syllabus that kind of breaks down, you know, for the time that we have left, what we will still be doing, and also what I'm calling a master calendar. And I think the master calendar is probably the thing that would be, of the most help to everybody right now. It shows every single thing that has been due or is due, both for our class that we meet on Tuesday and for the Thursday class. And wherever it says on ePortfolio, these were things that you would have been doing in the Thursday class with Jessica Amar. So what I try to do here is to kind of just show up to now, right? Where are we? And up to now, we're over here at degree planning. That's the sheet that was due on April the 16th. I'll still take it. Notice how heavily it's weighted, because this is something that is going to help you for the future. So I'm trying to weight it in a way that means that you're doing this work for yourself, but it's also counting a big part of your grade for the class. So please get this done. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can email me later. And then for today, after we finish with the financial workshop, which might carry on into next week, you'll just have a reflection, something that you'll have to write about. Next week, we'll talk about time management. We'll do some exploration of resources that are on the campus. We'll talk about what possibilities you have of doing some activities and things that can strengthen your resume. We'll work with you to build your resume, especially in this time where people may have to be looking for alternative work. And then at the end, I dropped the percentage of this because I know that people are very busy. So at the end, I'm going to ask you to probably just make a 1 to 2 minute video where you just talk basically into your phone, following a few questions that I'm asking you, to just talk about some of the themes that we had dealt with over the course of this semester. Does anybody have questions about this master calendar? I hope I'm not going, if I'm going too fast, stop me if you need me to explain something. Okay. I hope it can be overwhelming to look at everything in one place and you're thinking, oh my word, this is crazy and so on. But what I'm hoping that this document can just provide you with is a checklist to say, yes, I did this when we were in class. I've already submitted this. I did this on the Thursday class. We've done that. I'm up to date or I'm not up to date. There's this one thing that I'm still missing. So then you can hand in the work that you might still be missing. Right, and I think that's what's critical right now, especially in these times, to be able to have some type of roadmap to say, okay, this is what we're doing. Just note that your final presentation that you will just do on your own phone and upload onto your ePortfolio is due on June the 4th, which is the last day of class. We won't have there's no exams in this class. You don't have to come and take an exam in the exam week. By June the 4th, we'll be done. Okay, so then that leaves you time to concentrate on your other classes. Any questions? Really? Nothing? All right.
Yeah, Professor, this is Jonathan Castro.
Hey, yes.
How's going to be the final presentation?
How is it going to be?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like, how will you make it, or what is it?
Yeah.
So what will happen is I'll give you a sheet that will probably have 3 or 4 what we would call prompts, almost like questions on it. And you can prepare whatever you want to say. And then you can literally just have either someone at your house or you can record yourself making a video talking about the things that are the questions on the sheet. And then you will just transfer it onto your ePortfolio.
Okay, Professor.
And the questions, I might ask you something like, giving some type of background about yourself, or the elevator speech. Like if you got into an elevator with someone who you really wanted to work with, what would you say to them in the 30 seconds that you have about yourself to try and market yourself. And I might ask you something like, which topic was the most important for you during the time that we spent together, and why? And then I might ask, something to do with your plan or your goal for the future. So very simple. It's not anything like a test, like you have to go and research something. It's all going to be to do with you. All right?
All right, thank you.
Okie dokie. Anything else? All right, let me see if I do a presentation. Yeah, I can't do this because it's actually working, never mind. So you guys can see the slides, right?
Yeah.
All good, okay. I'm trying to see if I can still, but if I do this, then I can't see the controls. So I'm gonna do it via not this one. I'm going to do it via the PDF. Okay, so again, for today's class, I just thought we might benefit from talking a little bit about money. And this is actually a topic that comes up in this course, a little bit later on in the semester, but I moved it forward because of the current situation that we all find ourselves in, where people are, not necessarily or some of us are not necessarily in the best financial position, considering loss of employment and illness and things of that nature. So I think I told you guys when we were together in person, right at the beginning of March, which feels honestly like a lifetime ago, that my background is also in finance besides accounting. I did study finance and also financial planning and so on. And that I mentor the finance club that's obviously not meeting the semester, but we also deal in the finance club with topics around personal finance. It also so happens that April is financial literacy month. So it's pretty, I guess, relevant that we are speaking about these things now. At any point during this presentation or workshop or whatever you want to call it, please feel free to stop me and ask me any questions. It's as much as you might be distracted or even bored or whatever on your phone while I'm talking, when I'm presenting, I feel like I'm just talking to some extent, it's like you're talking to yourself. So I welcome any conversation during the time. Let's not make this like I'm just making a presentation and you're just listening. Sorry, my throat's a bit dry. So some of the topics that I'm hoping to cover, and because I'm probably being overly ambitious, that's why I said we'll probably go into next week as well. Just a quick definition of what financial literacy means, for you to think a little bit about what is your, I'm calling it money personality, but basically what does it mean for you in terms of your interactions with money? How does that go? I want to talk a little bit about the COVID-19, the impact, the stimulus and other considerations around unemployment and so on. And then some basic things like credit scores. The reason I bring this up, I don't know if this has happened to anybody in this time, but I've certainly seen a few things happen while I've been home. I feel like there's been an increase in people trying to commit fraud and things, hacking and things like that during this time. I think that folks who are engaged in hacking are aware that many of us are much more online than we normally would be. And so, we do face the potential risk that if we don't monitor our credit properly and put proper securities in place, that during this time we could become, we could succumb to some type of fraudulent activities. Budgeting is a big part. So, sometimes people say, well, I don't have any money, why should I budget? But you're kind of already budgeting in your head. If you don't have a budget on paper, you're kind of already budgeting in your head. So my hope is that as we go through together, you would actually begin to be able to build a budget or use a budget that you've already built. You don't have to share the budget that you build with the class or necessarily with me. It's just trying to go through and we want to go through the steps of how to build a budget. Then also talking about saving, about debt, and how to pay off debt or deal with debt, and then also a little bit on investing. So if you wanted to start, when you do have some excess cash that you don't need for emergency funds and so on, how would you even begin to invest if you wanted to invest in stocks or other financial instruments? So let's start with what is financial literacy. Does anybody, you might already be looking at the slides, which is fine because they are on Blackboard, but does anybody want to take a guess into what you think it means, financial literacy means?
Like financial statements of some kind.
Financial statements of some kind. So you mean your own financial statements or somebody else's financial statements?
Yeah,
or
your own, yeah.
Okay, so something to do with your financial statements. Okay, I'll take some more comments. Anybody else? Does anybody know what the word literacy means? Or what you think that might mean? Crickets. Oh, good. Someone's talking. Yay. Go ahead.
I don't know how to phrase it, but I guess knowing how, I don't know, knowing how to manage money or knowing
Yes.
stocks.
Yeah. You're on the right track. Is this Tanisha?
Yes.
Yeah. So Tanisha, and who spoke first? Was that Jeremy? I can't see who's talking when I'm in my thing. So
Yeah,
you guys are on the right track. So financial literacy is about knowing how to manage your money, knowing what the meaning is of, you know, certain words and terms and things that are going to come up. This is only one definition. There are many definitions of financial literacy. This was you know, there's an advisory council on financial literacy that some years back, this was still in the Obama years, they came out with this definition: the ability to use knowledge and skills to manage financial resources effectively for a lifetime of financial well-being. So when we're talking about literacy, to be literate, normally when you think about it that way, you're thinking about you can read and write, right? If you say someone is literate, they can read and write. But in this case, about finances, so you're saying that you can, you know, manage your own money, you understand enough about money and the terminology around money to be able to make decisions that will result in you effectively, meaning, you know, you're doing it well and you're doing it with good returns, manage your money, not just for today or tomorrow, but for your entire lifetime. And this is not like a one-shot deal where when you suddenly know how to manage money, you'll just be able to do it. It's actually going to be a process of continually learning and exposing yourself to these things. I have to just say personally, you know, I don't know how you guys grew up, but the way I grew up, financial literacy wasn't even, you know, on the radar. It just wasn't something that was discussed. I mean, I studied finance at university and they never spoke about personal finances. They only ever spoke about the finances of a company. You know, there was no discussion on how to manage your own money. So over time, even though, you know, my background is finance, I had to basically begin to teach myself and then study further to understand personal finances. So some of you may be really up to date with this and you are really organized and so on, which is great. Others may not be. Others may think that it doesn't matter because I live at home and somebody else is dealing with the money. What I can say is that you know, I'm shocked sometimes by the fact that there isn't a whole course on this at colleges, because this is, you know, being able to manage your money, to live within your means, to understand how debt and investing and things work is probably one of the most critical skills that you can have to be able to, I guess, build, whether it be build wealth or, you know, get out of debt and things of that nature. So with, you know, with that in mind, with me talking about a little bit about my background, I just want you guys to spend some time, maybe we'll say 6-7 minutes, to think about your own money personality. So take a few minutes to think about your history with money, right? And you might say, well, money is just money, it's a piece of paper. Yes, it is a piece of paper, but there's actually a lot of emotional and social, you know, I guess, feelings around money for many people. And I just want you to answer the following prompts. What is your earliest memory around money? What was the attitude towards money in your family of origin? What do you perceive to be your relationship with money or your money personality right now? Like, do you see yourself as someone who likes to spend, who likes to save, who's in between, who doesn't really care about money and thinks that they'll be able to be okay regardless? Are you worrying about money? How do you think your early experiences affect your relationship with money today? Do you think that it's possible for your money personality to change over time? All right, so I'm going to talk maybe 5-6 minutes or more. I'll check in with you guys to answer these questions for yourself about your money personality. And these questions are also going to eventually lead to the reflection that we'll, you know, do later on to do with this work. So take your time. I'll be right back. All right. So, you know, normally, obviously, this stuff doesn't come up in the workshop, but it has to come up now because we're in this very strange time. As you probably know, the government passed this economic stimulus bill, this CARES Act, in March to help individuals, businesses, and you know, the state government and so on. We had Anastasia talking about the fact that Anastasia, am I right? You said that you already received your stimulus check. Did I hear you correctly? Is Anastasia still on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yes, I received it
Okay,
on
good.
April 15th.
Okay, great. Yeah, so those checks went out. First of all, the checks were, you know, up to $1,200 per adult, depending on your income levels, and $500 per child, but the child has to be under 17 years old. And you know, if you are expecting a stimulus check, it would have started going out the week of April the 13th. Like Anastasia said, she got it on the 15th. That's when many people got theirs. The payment that you would have received was either based on your 2018 tax return or your 2019 tax return if you already filed for 2019. You know, the problem obviously with the stimulus for some people, depending on how high their income is, that they might have had high income in 2018 that came up in their 2019 tax return, but they might now be without work. So, you know, some people actually may have become disqualified from receiving a stimulus check. But they actually do need the money. So unfortunately, the system is a little bit flawed. Now, you might say to me, I didn't have to file a return, or, you know, I'm on Social Security, or someone, you know, all these different scenarios. You can definitely go to the IRS website and check. You did not have to file a tax return in order to get the stimulus money. All right. So you can still enter your information and get the money as long as you meet whatever other criteria they put down there. So, you know, just go through and check to see if you meet the criteria, then you should be able to get the money. And for some of you, maybe you didn't get yours yet. The IRS does have on the same link, you know, a whole thing where you can say, get my payment, or where's my money type of thing. That system is quite flawed. A lot of people just get error messages when they try to figure it out. For any number of reasons, it could be happening. I'm one of the, like, our family hasn't received any deposits or any, you know, anything else. Paper checks will only come much later in the year. So we haven't received anything, and I think part of the reason that we haven't is because we owed taxes in 2018, so we paid because, you know, we ran the numbers and saw that we would be better off paying on a credit card because we would also get hotel points. And so the IRS doesn't have our direct deposit information. When I went onto their website to try and see if I could input my information, the system, like I said, is just returning errors. So if you owed, for some of you, if you owed something last year, and you didn't get the money, you might be in the same position as me. Or for other people, if you had someone preparing your taxes and your refund comes to them and then they write you a check, it's possible that your stimulus check went to them and that you have to get it from them, like if you had a tax preparer. Otherwise, you know, if you meet the requirement, you should be getting a check. So please make sure that you follow up and that you don't just assume that you didn't qualify. It's supposed to go to basically everybody. Any questions about, you know, about whether you should or should not have received the check? All right. And, you know, there's a lot of confusion for some people about what the check actually represents. Some people are trying to say that, oh, this is taxable income, or, oh, you have to pay it back when you fill out your taxes for, for next year's tax return. That's not the case, okay? The check is what we would call an advance payment of a refundable tax credit for 2020 for your tax return. It's absolutely not taxable, and it won't affect any type of tax refund that you should be getting for the 2020 year. It's basically just going to show up as your tax on your tax return as a refundable tax credit that was owed to you. And if you did receive the check, then you're fine. If you didn't receive the check, then you will still get the tax credit that way because the IRS is supposed to pay you. So please don't worry that the $1,200 is now going to become, you know, taxable income, or that you're going to get less than $1,200 because tax will be withheld. It's nothing like that. It's a straight $1,200 payment. It's a refundable tax credit, and you should be seeing it. And next year when you do your taxes for 2020, you will be able to I guess see that it's not going to affect your refund for that year. Sorry, I think that the slide doubled up, so apologies for that. As it relates to unemployment, just like Anastasia was saying, you know, where you were talking about filing for unemployment benefits. For anybody who has been filing, you probably know that it's been incredibly difficult to get, first of all, to get online and then to get through on the phone. But excuse me, the Department of Labor has changed their system subsequently for people to make the process more streamlined, for you to be able to apply for unemployment insurance. If you already were approved, you'll just continue to receive those benefits for 39 weeks from the time that you remember that the timeline is extended by the government. And in addition to your unemployment, you should also be getting an extra $600 available until July the 31st. So the regular payment in New York State, the max amount that you can get is $504 per week for unemployment. And then that's for the 39 weeks. And then for some of you, depending on whether you qualify and so on, you may be getting an extra $600. So if you're eligible, you apply for unemployment. So this, by eligible, it means you were working at a place that, you know, you were properly employed, proper paperwork and everything. You're eligible, you apply. If you were working like Uber driving, gig workers, you know, delivery, whatever, so you were working for yourself, basically. You were a contractor, 1099 employee. You're technically not eligible for unemployment insurance, but because of the pandemic, there's pandemic unemployment assistance, which would give you $600 per week. Is that clear to everybody? Any questions about that? People are pretty quiet, so I don't know if that means that this just doesn't apply or you already know this. And even if you exhausted your unemployment insurance before, you know, sometime last year, you can still get additional unemployment insurance for some extra time in 2020. All right. So this may not maybe apply directly to you, but it could apply to a family member, it could apply to a significant other, and so on. So please make sure that you guys are actually getting the money that is rightfully owed to you, especially if you were working, like I said, as an independent contractor or someone like that, where the company said, oh, you don't qualify for unemployment. You should still qualify for the pandemic unemployment assistance. And then, as I said, also, we've already kind of discussed this, the emergency relief grant from the chancellor. Anastasia was saying that, you know, the one day passed already, but I think it will be extended. $500 to students, but it's a lottery system. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to click on that. Well, you know, we've seen this already. It's a lottery system. Where's my thing now? Sorry, 1 second. Did I lose it? Oh, probably because I clicked on the thing, so I lost it. All right. Yeah, so it's a lottery system, and you know, people will be selected. You can apply for the foundation. I will email the foundation folks about the people who don't yet have a GPA. There's also the food pantry on LaGuardia's campus, open 9 to 5. There's 3 free meals at any school near you for everybody who's in your household. So, you know, it doesn't matter if you're one person or 5 people, you can go once a day in the morning and get the 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for everybody in your household. And everybody in the household does not need to show up to get the food. You should just be able to tell them that you have 5 people that you're picking up food for, and they have to give you 5, you know, well, 5 times 3 is 15 meals. From time to time, I, you know, read stories where people, like, they were struggling to get the food or whatever. That's most of the time because the people who are handing out the food are not aware of the rules. So, you know, if you are doing this and you're having issues, you should just basically escalate to whoever's in charge, because you are supposed to get 3 free meals a day for however many people are in your household. For any mental health concerns, no one mentioned that when I was asking about concerns, but I'm sure, you know, anxiety, stress, depression, things of that nature, those things are, you know, escalating during this time. There is free help available through the city. You can call, or you can text, or you can go and chat online with qualified professionals. There's also, let me see if I can open up my email here. To just go to a very recent email that just came through. Oh, I don't think I'll be able to find it. Maybe I'll send it to you guys. I'll send it to you guys later. But there are also some other, you know, there's a LaGuardia, what they call a virtual circle, where people meet on Zoom to support each other with someone who is I think a psychologist. So those are, you know, some of the other resources that are available during this time. I'm sure there are more, but I don't want to overwhelm you with stuff either. Does anybody have a question about a particular type of resource that you might need or want to know more about? No? Okay. You guys are very quiet. Am I boring you to tears, or are you still with me?
Yeah.
What, Tanisha, is it just you and me? Are you guys still okay there? Is everybody actually still, you know, on the call?
Yeah, Still, still
Yes.
here, still,
Okay,
still
just
here, Professor.
okay, just checking. I don't want to, you know, put people to sleep at this time. All right. So that was the, you know, money personality. We'll still be thinking about that as we go through. We spoke a little bit about the COVID relief. One thing that I did want to mention under these COVID considerations, you know, is rent. It's possible, you know, if you're renting somewhere that that you may be concerned because you're not able to pay your rent at this time because you are out of work. Of course, you should be in communication with your landlord, you know, about that. There is supposed to be a moratorium, meaning like people are trying to get a rent freeze at least for 3 months. I don't know that that has taken effect yet. Does anybody know if that's taken effect? I don't think it has. Sorry, my daughter is losing the plot in the background. No one knows about the rent freeze. Okay, so anyway, I don't think the rent freeze has taken place. What I do want to say though, guys, and this is where you want to listen very carefully. If you are not able to pay your rent, let's say you weren't able to pay your rent for April, your landlord cannot just kick you out of your apartment. That's not how this works, all right? The way this works is that once you are not able to pay your rent, first of all, you talk to the landlord and probably try and work something out, but theoretically, you are allowed to still stay in the apartment even if you have not paid rent until the landlord actually ends up going to the court to basically apply, like to make a case to apply for you to be I mean, real talk, right? For you to be evicted from the apartment, and then that case actually has to be heard in housing court, etc. So I think landlords sometimes bank on the fact that people don't know this, and that they get scared if the landlord says, I'm going to kick you out. I mean, you have options. You could even speak to the landlord and say, you know, you're really in a jam. Maybe you expect your work to start back up in May. Is it possible, if they really don't want to, you know, listen, maybe they can apply some of your security deposit for, you know, part of the month's rent, or something like that. If you're just renting a room from someone, they also can't just kick you out. That's not how this works. There's a lot of protection for tenants in the city. So please don't just leave your home because the landlord threatened you. In fact, right now, the housing courts are closed. They're only hearing cases to do with like heat and water, you know, like basic emergency needs. They're not listening to any cases about evictions. So I'm not trying to tell you don't pay your rent, right? That's not what I said. I said if you are not able to pay your rent right now and the landlord is threatening to evict you and your family, it's not on, okay? Because the process of eviction is actually a very long process that they have to go through, and especially given the pandemic circumstances that we find ourselves in, the courts are not going to tolerate people being thrown out of their homes in the midst of the crisis that we are in. So I'm just saying that, you know, I don't know where you are, like what your circumstances are with rent and so on, but please don't be intimidated. Make sure you know what your rights are before you just leave your residence because of a threat. If you have a mortgage, remember that the banks are supposed to be giving you a 3-month reprieve where you are not supposed to be having to pay your mortgage. That does mean that that after 3 months you have to kind of pay a lump sum or pay back, you know, as much as possible. But the point is still that you shouldn't have to, you know, feel like your house is going to be foreclosed on because you aren't able to pay the mortgage. Everybody's in the same boat, which, you know, as much as this boat sucks that we are in right now, what's good about it is that everybody's in the same boat, which means that there's a lot of people who, you know, can form a critical mass to make sure that that we're not being treated unfairly. All right. So again, if you are a renter, your landlord can't just say because you missed 1 month of rent that you need to leave the premises. They have to get a formal eviction notice from the court, and that is not going to happen right now because the courts are closed. Any questions about that, or that's clear?
It's clear.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I don't know if there's any other COVID questions, COVID money related questions you guys can ask me. You can interrupt me, or you can ask in the chat window, or you can, you know, just email me. But for now, I'm going to move on from the COVID stuff to talk a little bit about credit score. Tanisha was, you know, talking about how she was worrying about her credit. And just hang on, but suddenly there's like a storm. There's like a storm here, and I can barely see my computer. I just want to also close the window. Okay. So what is a credit score and who uses it? I think a lot of us already know what that is, but I'll just go over it quickly. Also going over how is your score calculated? Do you know your score? What resources are available to find your credit score? And how can you increase your score or fix your credit? So does anybody want to say, I know you can probably already see the answer to this, but just for some audience participation, what is a credit score and who uses it?
Well, a credit score, it just basically shows how responsible you are to the banks with your money.
Okay. Okay. So it's some type of number that shows a level of responsibility. Responsible in terms of what? What do you mean when you say responsible?
Like with how you spend.
Okay. So how you
like
spend
if
your
you try
money?
like if you ask, you know, for like a loan, they'll really keep close track of how long it takes you to, you know, pay the bank back, or
Okay.
if you have
Yeah.
like, yeah, you know, stuff to
Yeah,
pay
that's right.
on time. Exactly.
Yeah, so you're totally right. So it's a number. The number can range between 300 to 850, right? You want the number to be as high as possible because it's indicating this big word, credit worthiness. But it's the same, like you were saying, how responsible are you? Are you able to pay back your debt? Right, evaluate the probability that you will repay, and also sometimes deciding on what level of interest rate to charge you, because the riskier you are, the more, you know, the higher the interest rate that they'll charge you, because they're saying, you know, we're taking a risk, so we want a bigger reward for taking that risk. So your score could range anywhere from 300 to 850. Who uses the credit score? This is still part of the discussion. You know, we already said banks, lenders, and so on. Your credit score can come from at least two different places. There's the classic FICO score that everybody knows about. There's also Vantage score. It's just another calculation, another way of calculating the score. Even when you want to rent an apartment, usually the agent will do a credit check. They'll run, you know, a background credit score for certain jobs, especially if you're going to be working with money in some way. They'll also sometimes run a credit score to make sure that you aren't making irresponsible decisions in your personal life, which could then turn into making bad decisions, you know, for the business. So there's that. There's running credit score if you want to get a mortgage. I mean, a car, note, you name it. The credit score comes up. Credit cards, opening, you know, new accounts, things of that nature. So what is a good credit score? Yeah, you can see somewhere in the arena of 670 to 739, or if you use Vantage, it's a slightly different thing. Very good, up to 800, and exceptional is, you know, up to 850. Sometimes you find that, I mean, I'm not saying that anybody can't get to 850, but sometimes you find, because of the way in which a credit score is calculated, that it's like more older people who have had credit for like years and years and done really well that will have these extremely high, you know, credit scores. If you're just starting out, it's not as, you know, possible to get to that level so quickly, because some of how this number is calculated is also dependent on how much time has passed. It says here that 67% of Americans have a good score. I don't know, you know, with this change in our environment now, and with a definite recession already happening, you know, what will become of that percentage. But certainly people are aiming to at least get to good at this time. And how do we calculate the credit score? Definitely looking at payment history, including the number and severity of late payments. So when, Tanisha, sorry to pick on you the whole time, but you gave me such a good example. When you were talking about the car note that you had and you had to give the car back, that's part of, right, why your credit score dropped, correct?
Yes. And it'll be on my like those type of I guess even if it wasn't a repossession, it's still gonna stay on your report.
Yeah,
Like,
and some of these things stay on your report for as long as 7 years, right, before it falls off. So if you have some type of default and so on, yes, it wasn't a repossession, you voluntarily gave the thing back, but unfortunately what they see then is that you are acknowledging that you're not able to meet your loan repayments.
right.
This severity of late payments, you want to be careful here, guys. If you have a credit card, hopefully everybody already automated the payment so that your payment just is made automatically every month and not up to you to remember to make it, because late payments on a credit card count against you for your credit score. You don't want to, you know, just forget to make the payment. And some cards will even charge a late fee, which means that's extra money that you are now losing that you didn't have to lose. So please make sure that for all your bills that you can, that you have them paid automatically out of your account. Of course, now if you've, you know, for people who are now no longer working, excuse me, and and having financial difficulties that we were just talking about, I can understand that you may even have to suspend some of your payments and try and figure out your finances to see what you can and cannot pay. You know, maybe trying to make at least the minimum payments on your accounts and so on. So, you know, if you want to talk to me about that, we can talk offline as well about how to approach the situation when you've now, become unemployed. How else do they calculate your credit score? They look at how much of the credit you actually use. So out of what's available to you, what was used. So let's say you have a credit card that has a $5,000 limit and you are using $4,500 of that limit. Do you think that is going to help your score or hurt your score?
I think it's gonna hurt it.
Yeah, because at that point you're saying you're using, you have a max 5,000 that you could, right, that you could spend, and you are spending 4,500, which means you are using up 90% of the credit that is available to you. So then, you know, a bank looking at something like that, or, you know, some potential lender, unless you just spend 4,500 in one shot and you're planning to pay it off, you know, immediately or something, if that is a debt that has been racking up over time, what you end up finding is that, you know, they'll say, well, you're obviously not paying your account off in full at the end of every month, so you are adding more debt. Plus, remember, the banks charge interest. If you are not paying off your account in full, you should be looking at your statement and you'll see that there's an interest charge that is going to come through. And also on your statement, it actually tells you, I'm sure you guys have seen this, if you only pay for the balance that you have, if you only pay the minimum that is due every month, how many years it will take you, right, to pay off. Has anybody seen that before on the credit card statement? Or have you ever looked at your credit card statement?
Yes.
Oh, I don't have a credit card.
Okay, but the person who said yes, I don't know who that was. Talk to me. Anastasia, yeah. So
Yeah.
you've seen it, right?
Yeah, because like every week on my bank account, on my bank application, it updates my credit score, and it's like you can go ahead and check information like about
Right.
how long it takes to pay off, what is the interest
Yeah.
percent,
Great.
the statistics, how to improve it, and all that.
Right. So you are actively looking at that, and that's something that, you know, that we all should be finding. If you haven't found it, if you have a credit card and you haven't looked at that yet, you should, because you don't want to just operate. And again, I understand that we're in strange times and some people may have lost their work. So please understand that I'm saying this with, you know, the concern and empathy that's necessary, and also just explaining under, you know, good circumstances how you would want to handle your finances, is that you absolutely don't want to just be paying the bare minimum of the money off every month. If you can afford to pay a little bit more, because you will end up, you know, for that dinner that you ate out or the pair of shoes that you bought, you'll be paying it off for 5 years sometimes, right? And so that's how we suddenly, like, how am I not making any progress on my card? Because it's like the minimum payment that you are making is sometimes only covering the interest for that month, and not cutting into any of the, what we would call the principal or the capital balance. And Anastasia also made a good point about the fact that, and this comes up later also, many of the banks and you know, even the credit card companies give you access to your credit score, where you can actually see what your credit score is at any given time. So definitely be thinking about how much of your card you're actually using. You want to aim for something like between 10 and 15% only. So if I have that $5,000 limit on my credit card, I probably only want to be spending up to $500 at any point in time. I know that sounds, you know, crazy, but unfortunately spending a whole lot of money on the card is going to negatively impact your score. And if you do know that your score has to be pulled for something, you know, in the near future, you probably want to try to pay down the balance, so that when your score does get pulled, like let's say you have to go get a new apartment or something, when your score does get pulled, your utilization rate isn't too bad. the number and age of your credit accounts and the type of account. So if you've had a credit card that was opened, for 10 years or 5 years or whatever, since very long ago, that you don't want to close an account like that, even if you only charge a little bit of money to it now and then and pay it off immediately, because your credit score is based on how long you've had credit available to you as well. So I have a Citibank credit card, which was like the first card that I ever had, because when I immigrated into this country, Citibank was the only bank that was willing to work with me to give me a credit, credit card, because I didn't have any credit history in the country. And so that account has been open for like 14 years. It's not a great credit card. It doesn't have great rewards or anything like that, but I still keep it open because I know that if I close it, it's going to have actually a devastating impact on my score, because it's the oldest account. Plus the limit on the account is probably about $10,000. So if I close it, my credit utilization rate will be impacted as well. So, just think about if you have more than one credit card, how long have these cards been open? Don't just close things without thinking about the impact. I'm not saying go wild and spend a whole lot of money on all your credit cards. What I am saying is just be strategic about not closing cards that are actually helping to improve your credit score. Other things that affect your credit score is if maybe you've declared bankruptcy. That's also something that stays on your credit report for a long time. If you start opening credit cards, lots of credit cards in a row. So, every special that comes in the mail where it says, oh, you've qualified for XYZ, don't apply for, every card that is made available to you, because applying for too many credit cards will also negatively impact your credit score. And when companies inquire into your credit report, that also is negative. So sometimes you go to a store and they say, do you want to open an account, let's say at Macy's or something? You want to know, is it a hard inquiry that they're doing to your credit report or a soft inquiry? If it's a hard inquiry, it's like a credit application and it's actually going to negatively impact your credit score. If it's a soft one, it won't have any impact. Does anybody have questions about any of the stuff about how your score is calculated? All right, so here you can see the breakdown of how these things impact your score. So your score is obviously 100%. 35% of that is your payment history. So the biggest part is how often have you made late payments? Are you paying on time? That type of thing. So believe it or not, this is going to cut right into the score if you are consistently making late payments and so on. So like I said, especially now in these times of like dire straits where you can't necessarily afford, maybe some people have lost work and so on, you can't necessarily afford to pay off your whole account or even the minimum. Just pay something, even if it's $10 if you have it, onto the account, so you just don't come up as making a late payment. How much is owed? So this is talking about the utilization rate. Big difference if you owe $500 on a $5,000 card or $4,500. Did you apply for new credit? How long have you had your accounts for? This is again the piece where if you close old accounts, it starts to count against you. And then, credit mix means, you have credit cards, do you have a mortgage, do you have personal loans, those types of things. They will also count into the thing. Or is it like all your cards are just with one bank versus several banks? So it means that, people see you as trustworthy and so on. So that's how the FICO score is calculated. So now, do you know your credit score? Like Anastasia said, you can find your, often just find your credit score if you have a credit card account online Often it just comes up. I've got one Capital One account and I get my credit score through CreditWise. You also can get it in other ways if you use mint.com, which is a financial management tool that comes through on there. There's all kinds of ways, but there are also other free ways to get your credit score. There are 3 credit bureaus that deal with credit scores. Once a year, you're allowed to get your credit score for free from each one of them. If you go to annualcreditreport.com, it's Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. You can also go through Credit Karma, where you can also get your credit score for free. Just beware of what score you are actually getting. If you have a lender that says we're going to pull your credit score and they're pulling a FICO score and you're getting some other calculation, from one of these, Credit Karma or whatever, just be aware that there might be a slight difference. Has anybody ever pulled their credit score using annualreport.com, creditreport.com? No? I know Anastasia has checked her score. Anybody else check their score using Credit Karma or Mint or any other method?
Yeah.
Are you checking your credit score?
I check
Yes?
mine on my phone.
Okay, so on your phone, okay. So people are at least, and if you aren't, that's okay. Start now, start making sure that you know what's going on. And why I'm saying this also is, remember I said at the beginning, I've noticed even in my own like email and stuff, a lot of, not a lot, but like some weird activity where I think with people being home and people being online, and there's a lot of like phishing scams and stuff where I think a lot of people are busy with fraudulent activity. And so this is the time to, and of course, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are in financial dire straits and may resort to criminal, activity to try and get, to try and benefit. So just before the whole pandemic happened, there was a fraudulent transaction on my American Express card, but they contacted me and we resolved it. Then recently I got a notification of someone trying to log into an online shopping account I have with Zulily, and one or two other things happened that were weird. Like I think someone was trying to get into my Facebook account. So as a result, I just reminded myself again that ages ago, I had thought about the fact that I either needed to freeze my credit or get something like LifeLock. And I had never done it. And so that night I sat down and I went through and I froze my credit report with each one of the three credit bureaus. Does anybody know what this means, to freeze your credit? No? It's okay. Basically what it is, I'm just checking if anyone said anything in the chat window. Basically what you're doing is you're just going on to, this Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. You're going on to each of those websites, and for free, you can freeze your credit report, which means that no one can take out credit, any type of credit card or anything in your name. Unless you actually there's basically like a PIN that you create, and you have to be contacted via your phone or email or something to say that someone made an application in your name, and you have to unlock or unfreeze your credit report so that whoever they are applying with, so let's say in this time, God forbid, someone tries to get, a Macy's card in my name because they, trying to do identity theft or whatever, Macy's would normally make an inquiry to one of these three or all three of these credit bureaus to see what my credit score is, to see whether they will issue the card. And because my credit report is frozen, they can't get any information until I am contacted to give approval that this can go through. So for free, I am able to protect myself because my concern, with all this online activity is that what if someone manages to get some of my personally identifiable information and starts trying to open accounts and stuff in my name. Did that make sense to you guys? Or does anybody have questions about that?
Yeah, it does make sense. I have a question.
Mm.
So like on the app for the credit card, you can lock it so that no one can use it, not even yourself. Does that also count as freezing it?
On the app for your credit card, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's one credit card. So yes, that does count as I guess you could almost say freezing that credit card, but that doesn't freeze your whole credit report. So somebody could still go in and try to take out a card in your name unbeknownst to you. You know, a card, so getting some type of credit or something in your name. So yes, lock your card, you know, locking your card and so on is good, because then for that card no one can use it. But what I'm talking about with the freezing is no one can open new credit cards in your name. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, because, you know, I became really worried because, like I said, someone tried to log into an online shopping site that I haven't used in a very long time. And what bugged me was that company a lot like has credit cards that they, you know, in their own name, like a store card. And I thought, wow, if someone can break into that company's you know, database and possibly got my information, and now they can go in as me and try to apply for a card in my name, then if my credit report isn't frozen, then they might be able to get away with it. And it's a very difficult thing after the fact to try and convince, you know, all the different creditors and stuff that your identity was stolen and that this wasn't you who was taking out all these accounts. Right? That's, I mean, that's the struggle. Once it's happened, then you have to try and undo the damage, and it becomes difficult. I did consider something like LifeLock or Identity Guard, where you pay a monthly fee and they basically monitor your credit report. They monitor whether your information is you know, floating somewhere online, that type of thing. I'm not saying that I'm not going to do that necessarily in future, but the most immediate thing I did was to freeze my credit, which was free. I don't have to pay a monthly fee. And, you know, hoping that that means that even if someone's trying to do any shenanigans in this time, they won't be able to. So that's part of increasing your score or keeping your score high, is that you don't want other people to come in and mess you up. Also pay your bills on time. We spoke about that. Set it up as auto pay so that you're at least paying something. You don't want that late fee. If at all possible, pay off your card in full at the end of each month and keep the balances low. Also, if possible, I know in this time it might not be as possible. You may even have to use a credit card to pay your day-to-day expenses because you're not earning any money right now. It's okay, we're in a very difficult situation, but just understand that when you're doing that, obviously it's impacting your credit. So perhaps try to plan for how you can unwind that when you come out of when we come out of the pandemic. And don't just apply for new cards all the time, because that's going to negatively impact you. I already said don't close things that are unused, but make sure that you monitor them so that there's no fraud or anything on them, especially if it's the cards that are very old. If you opened a new card and you're not using it, and you don't want to be tempted to use it, by all means, you know, cut it up and let it go. But you know, your oldest cards, if you close them, they'll negatively impact you. And dispute any inaccuracies in your credit reports. So even though we get our credit scores and they look good generally, you know, when we look at them online, remember that you can pull your entire report that shows all the inquiries and things that were made in your name or anything that's on there, and you can make sure that you dispute any inaccuracies. All right. If you don't have a credit card, how do you build credit? You could open one with a very low limit and make sure that you pay off the balance every month. But you know, this has to happen under careful consideration. If you're not working or something like that, and you don't have a need for a credit card, just think about whether you are in a position right now where you will be disciplined enough not to overspend, you know, on the card. If you are an immigrant and you don't have a credit history and you are not able to, you know, just get a credit card, you can open what's called a secured credit card. So it's something like this, like you put $200 on deposit with the bank, and the bank then gives you a credit card with a limit of $200. And as you use the card and pay off the balance, they'll increase the limit, and so it improves your credit score until you get to a point where you don't have to use a secured card anymore. If your family members are willing, you can also become an authorized user on a joint account, but you have to be careful here, because if the other person messes up, you know, you could also be implicated. So maybe you want to try on your own first. If you want to decrease your utilization rate, you can also apply for credit limit increase on cards that you already have, if you are in good standing with the bank, and you know, try as much as possible not to spend too much money on your cards. Any questions about building credit, credit scores, credit reports, freezing your credit, etc.?
Yeah, Professor. I wanted to ask about the credit card. So let's say like I open up a credit card, right? And that's like kind of like the start of my credit.
Yeah, that's right.
Just hold it, and you can like hold it and don't use it at all.
You can, but then after a while, because this happened to me, you know, when I first moved to the country, I didn't, there's a very different approach in South Africa. So I first moved to the country. I think one of the first cards that I had was some type of Ann Taylor, you know, the clothing store card, and I wasn't using it at all. And what happens is, after you haven't used it for many, many months, I can't remember the exact amount of time, the card becomes dormant and it gets canceled, you know. So you don't want to just hold it and never ever use it. You probably just want to show, because remember how they calculate the credit score. Okay, so you have the card, you know, but there's also things like payment history and so on that's going to improve your credit score. So if you get it and just keep it, that's only one element of how they calculate your credit score, right? So you want to at least maybe charge $5 or $10 to it, but then pay it off at the end of the month. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that just, I mean, opening a card is going to help your credit score, but what will help your credit score even more is you actually, you know, using it, but using it very carefully and making sure that you're paying it off, because that's one of the other elements of how a credit score is calculated. Any other questions? All right. So I hope that up to now this was helpful for you. You do have access to all of this information over here, all of the stuff that I'm going through. We will start talking about budgeting next time. Why is a budget necessary, and how to build a budget and what is included. If you want to, and I also told Jessica that you guys can start working on this if you want to on Thursday's class. If you finished all your other stuff, you can start looking at this Excel spreadsheet that's like a basic budget that I just set up for you. The Excel spreadsheet is over here. Right, so you can see I tried to list as many fixed expenses and as many variable expenses as possible, and also any debt repayments. And so we're trying to see, basically by building the budget, you can begin to see where you might have room in your budget for paying off debt or for saving, investing, and so on. If you already have a budget that you are keeping track of, or you use something like Mint or something like that, that's fine. Then next time when we come together next week, then you just bring that budget. Like I said, we're not trying to get people to necessarily show their budget to each other or anything like that. It's more about actually just an exercise for you in budgeting. And you might say, well, I live at home, I don't need to have a budget. But then I'm going to challenge you and say that there will come a time when you will no longer be living at home. And so then at that point, you kind of need to have an idea of how to budget. Okay, so next time when we come together, we'll talk a little bit more about budgeting. We've spoken about savings a little bit, and then debt and investing. But for the second hour, I will deal with time management as well. All right. So anything else, excuse me, that people want to ask me before we close this out?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah,
when will you be posting the video that you record? And where? Because I came in late, so I'm pretty sure I missed a lot of stuff. So I can watch the video.
Yeah. Okay. So so my ability to post the video depends on how long Zoom takes to render the cloud recording. So what normally happens is maybe by this evening, they'll send me an email to say the recording is finished. Then I have to render it into YouTube. So probably somewhere later tonight or tomorrow, it will be up and it gets posted. Let me just share. For those people who need to go, you can go, right? You don't have to feel compelled to stay. Let me just share with you, Andel, on YouTube. I have a channel there. Sorry, this is like all my daughter's baby stuff. I have a channel there, and so it's the first year seminar for business, a Zoom call playlist, and I normally just add to it. All right, so it's we have 3 or so of them that are up already.
Yeah,
you got it.
Yeah, I got it.
So this one will go up later, either tonight or tomorrow, depending on how long Zoom takes, and then depending on how long YouTube takes. All right. And some of the other things that I spoke about at the beginning, you've already done. Like I was talking about the degree plan stuff. I think you and I already emailed each other.
Yeah.
But there are some things, like there is a revised syllabus. There's a what I call the master calendar of dates and grade weightings and stuff that people can follow. So, there probably are a few things that you just want to check out on the video.
Yeah, I'm planning to watch your video and I got it.
Okie dokie. Anybody who still wants to talk to me, I'm here, but I also have office hours at 1 o'clock using that meeting ID. So if you want to talk to me on office hours, that's also okay. Otherwise, thanks for your participation and have a lovely day.
Thanks, Professor. Anything else?
All right. You're welcome, guys. It's good to see you as always.
Bye.